This conference will now be recorded.
I can't hear Charles.
Charles, I'm not hearing you either.
Oh, and now Todd left.
Charles, I'm still not getting any sound from you. Oh, he left. Nancy Chase has arrived. Good morning, Nancy.
You know, Ian, while we're taking time here, we're doing our best to publicize these meetings by posting the agenda on the community club website and on the Save Arch Cave Falcon Cove website, but we're missing so many people because we don't have access to full contact information for everybody in the region. I'm wondering if at some point we could put some thought into how either you guys or us could get a complete roster so that we could do a better job of letting people know what's going on with this project.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is that we have the ability to generate mailing lists based on tax accounts. So we can compile all of the mailing addresses for property owners within the Southwest Coastal Planning Area. We don't, unfortunately, have an email list that would be that broad and inclusive. So what we've been relying on to date has been people signing up for updates via email at our meetings.
Okay. Well, the mailing list, maybe we could do one mailing that solicits, that informs people how they can opt in to one of those lists. So that might be a project we could put together. Maybe the community club could volunteer to do that.
Okay. Yeah, let me know and we can coordinate. I can help put that list together or have someone from our GIS department help with that.
Thank you.
Okay, we see Charles Dice waving. Do we have audio from you, Charles? Still can't hear you, Charles.
Charles, I wonder if he's calling in or is he using his computer audio?
Charles, do you want to try calling in for your audio? You can leave your video on through your computer and then just call in to do the audio piece. And I am putting the phone number and access code into the chat box here in case you don't already have it in front of you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, though you do have an echo. Can you mute yourself on your computer?
How's that?
Much better.
Okay. All right, I don't know why Not
Not working today, but it usually works better.
So we should go ahead and get started. Thanks. Oh, there's Margaret. Great. So now we do have everyone here.
Well, Todd left. I don't know where he is.
Oh, he's just arriving now, I see.
Oh, okay.
So I'll call the meeting to order. I think everybody on the committee certainly knows everybody. Although I suppose for the people that dialed in, we will quickly go through introductions. I'm Charles Dice in Cove Beach. I'm chairman of the committee.
I'm Linda Ironman, Arch Cape member.
Chris Anderson, Arch Cape member.
I'm Margaret Treadwell. I live up in Astoria, but I work for Friends of Cape Falcon Marine Reserve, which is why I got put on this committee. And but I'm on here as an individual citizen capacity.
Todd, are you there? I'm not hearing from Todd, although his name shows up. Well, I'm going to assume perhaps he has microphone issues, kind of like I did. So we'll try and struggle along. I know we have a lot to cover today. We also have some guests on. Mr. Paparoni joined. Looks like Nancy Chase is on. Julia Decker is on. I don't know who C is. So if the person that has just the letter C could identify themselves, that would be great.
Charles, I think that's just your phone audio.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yep.
All right, then I think we've got everybody identified. So why don't we move along with a review of the minutes from the July 8th meeting. So the first thing I guess I'd comment on is it says public present none, but I do think a couple of people dialed into that meeting, if I remember correctly. I think Mr. Paparoni dialed in and Nancy Chase dialed in. I don't know if anybody else did. Does anybody else remember that?
I don't think we had any public at the last meeting in July.
This is Guido Paparoni. I did dial in last time.
Oh,
This is Nancy Chase, and I dialed in as well.
oh, okay.
Okay, I didn't have those in my notes. I just had them at the meeting from June, but I will add them as participants to the July meeting as well.
Okay, any other comments regarding the minutes? So I'm not hearing any. I did have one comment. On the second page, there's a paragraph between line 6 and line 11 that talks about a discussion that we had regarding two cases in Arch Cape revolving around wetland variances. And there was a point made that somehow didn't make it into the minutes, but I think it's an important one. And that is that in both cases, one of the crux issues regarding the variance which ended up getting approved had revolved around the issue of the property owner creating a self-inflicted wound with respect to the request for the variance, meaning that when both property owners bought their property, It was well, I mean, the wetlands were there. I mean, you can't, you can't disguise the wetlands. The wetlands were there. The regulations were there, stating what the regulations state. So the property owner should have and could have been well informed about the problems with that particular lot. So certainly I made the point that that was a bone of contention that I would like to make sure we address in our plan update to make sure that that kind of situation does not recur. So I'd just like to, and Ian, if you want to go back and listen to the tape or whatever, that's great. But I'd request that that specific point about self-imposed problems or hazards was a bone of contention in both of those two variance cases.
Okay, noted, Charles. I will go back and listen to the audio and add a sentence or two to that effect.
Thanks. So does somebody want to move to amend the minutes or accept the minutes as amended?
I guess maybe we should see them again next month when they are amended, if they are.
Okay,
so you guys could either you could either propose some language that you'd like me to add, or I can go back into the audio and put something together, and then you can review that at your next meeting. It's up to you either way.
What do you want to do, Linda?
I don't want to take a lot of time on this, so I just think we don't have a decision. We don't have a consensus of what actually was said. I just move to approve the minutes at the next meeting. How about that?
Somebody want a second?
Crystal, second.
All in favor? Aye, Charles?
Aye.
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 I think I heard everybody except Todd, and Todd seems to have disappeared again. Either that or I can't scroll. I don't see scroll arrows. Okay, so we'll say that 4 of us anyway approved, and we don't have Todd.
Charles, I see Carl Mattson is raising his hand if you'd like to address him.
Yes. So did you have some question of some sort, Carl? We can't hear you, Carl.
Be sure to take yourself off mute.
Okay, thank you. Point of order. I just went to find those minutes from July 8th, and I got a 404 file directory not found on your website. I'm not real smart about navigating your website, but it seems like there might be a problem you might want to look at.
Okay, thank you for bringing that to my attention, and I will see if I can get those uploaded somehow through the chat window here so that you can have access to them.
Okay, so
it's been moved
and approved to table the approval of the minutes until the next meeting. So with that, I see that the agenda from Ian says that there's a room for public comment here. I'm not exactly sure why, because typically that, for me anyway, that occurs at the end, but I'll let Ian speak to it.
I think we may have discussed this at the first meeting back in June, that we were going to start putting a public comment opportunity in the agendas prior to the committee's discussion, so that members of the public have the opportunity to raise issues prior to the discussion beginning. if there are matters that they would like to see the committee discuss, rather than waiting until the end of the discussion or interrupting the discussion.
Okay, I must have been asleep during that portion, but sounds logical to me. So let's go ahead and if anybody's got something they want to say, then unmute yourself or raise your hand so Ian can unmute you, however you want to do it.
This is Guido Paparoni. If I may, I do have a question. Mr. Ian, may I ask a question?
Yeah,
Yes.
Ian,
Last week, there was a DLCD workshop in advance of this meeting where wetlands were discussed. And the issue came up that at the Clatsop County website, where you can look at the wetlands, there were two versions, a local, project in Arch Cape that was also funded by the Falcon Cove Water District. And then there was a federal wetland overlay as well. And there was some discussion whether the Arch Cape wetlands was going to be accepted or not. My question is there going to be meetings with people that are impacted by these wetlands before they are accepted? And do the federal wetlands override the local wetlands, or what is the process to do that? Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Mr. Paparoni. So the local wetland inventory for Arch Cape has been accepted by the Oregon Department of State Lands, which is the regulatory authority for wetlands and waters of the state. So we currently use the local wetland inventory to review potential impacts to wetlands when we receive applications for development permits in the area covered by that local inventory. In areas where we don't have a local inventory, we are left with the National Wetlands Inventory and a few other layers that are provided by the state in the statewide wetlands inventory. So what the discussion was, the way I understood it at the workshop, was that the county has not adopted specific regulations for the local wetland inventories. And I know that was something of interest to the Southwest Coastal Group, and I'm sure that will come up today. But there is some discussion about whether the county should adopt that local wetland inventory with specific regulations to go along with that, such as providing prescribed setbacks to those mapped wetland boundaries or something along those lines. And so something like that would certainly involve a public process prior to it becoming an official policy.
Thank you, Mr. Ian.
I see Linda raising her hand as well.
If there's nothing else from the public, I have an item of, I think I'd call it old business from the last meeting that I'd like to get clarification of. Would this be a time to raise that? It pertains to the wetlands. Is that all right?
Yeah, sounds good to me. I see Todd Lundy's come back with a picture, so welcome, Todd.
Good. There's been a lot of discussion in the community this past month since the last meeting, because I wrote in my notes, and I think we were told there are no setbacks, protections for the wetlands in Arch Cape at this time. And I think I got that right. Even though there are setback ordinances in place, 25 feet in Falcon Cove and 50 feet in Arch Cape, but they're not being enforced because of the interpretation.
Hello, I can't hear anybody. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, so So Todd, yes,
Hi, Todd.
we can hear you. And I don't know why you can't hear us, but we can hear you.
Mic is supposed to be on. The speaker isn't. I don't know.
So Ian, if you can maybe get a message somehow to Todd and have him dial in as I did. Thank you, Julia.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes. Hello, Todd.
finally. Hi. Sorry, you guys. I've had a hardware problem. I'm now on my backup computer. Okay, sorry.
Well, welcome.
Yeah.
So, so Linda's got a question about some clarification. I'm going to let Ian address.
Yeah. So my question, and I want to be sure that I'm understanding this right, is that the county is following the interpretation of aquatic or non-aquatic waters that comes from County Council's memo of October 3rd, 2014, and that is making the setback ordinances unenforceable vis-a-vis the wetlands. Is that right? Directing it to the county people?
Linda, can you see what I've got shared on the screen here? I can try to zoom in a bit.
Yes, but is that being applied?
Well, I just wanted to make sure you could see that first before I launched into this.
I can see it. I can see it fine.
Okay, so this is from the zoning ordinance in the development standards for the AC RCR zone, which is the Arch Cape Rural Community Residential Zone. So there is a standard related to vegetation, and subsection 12E here says the setback for all structures shall be 50 feet from the line of non-aquatic vegetation. So my understanding, and Julia may be able to elaborate on this, is that there was a policy memo that we received from County Land Use Council regarding a clarification of what is meant by the line of non-aquatic vegetation. And the interpretation was that aquatic is a term that refers to coastal shorelands only, and not to other water areas or wetlands. So I believe that is what you're referring to. And so we also have in the standards document, section S 4.500 for protection of riparian vegetation, which requires 50-foot riparian area to be maintained adjacent to a few different areas. So those are more water bodies and not necessarily wetlands. So maybe Julia could chime in and talk a little bit more about this development standard in the AC-RCR zone, calling for a 50-foot setback from the non-aquatic vegetation line.
Okay, but let me just ask this. Is that definition being applied to the entire county? The line of non-aquatic vegetation is being defined, has been interpreted for Clatsop County as being only within the shoreland area boundary?
That is my understanding.
Whoa, okay, that's what I thought.
So has the ordinance been revised?
That's the revised ordinance. Ian, can you throw the slides to me for just a second? The presentation screen.
Okay, Julia, you're the presenter now.
Okay, so I'm showing you a map that I dredged out of the deep dark drawers here, and this is the Goal 17 Coastal Shorelands map. We have maps of the entire county that show the shoreland overlay, and so I'm going to start at the top here. I just photocopied a couple pages of this, and this is a Mylar. It's oversized, so it's not the whole map. I'm just going to show you a couple pieces of it. But this is Goal 17 Coastal Shorelands, and then I'm going to show you the legend of it and ask you to pay specific attention to the areas of significant shoreland and wetland biological habitat, also the 100-year floodplain and exceptional aesthetic or scenic qualities, remembering that what Ian just showed you about the shoreland overlay definition, the explanation in the code. So anyway, with these in mind, because I cannot show you all of it at the same time, and you can see that we have the kind of the Cannon Beach, Hug Point area over here. I'm going to drop down to another page. Oh, there's the thing that shows you the coastal shoreland boundary. I'm going to drop down to another page. Here's the Arch Cape Tunnel area, and here's Cove Beach down here, so we can see that definition that has to do with the areas where there's flooding, so within 100 feet of ocean flooding. So this would be the Cove Beach area here, actually, I think pretty close to where Mr. Dice lives. If I go up above the tunnel, then you can see, again, the areas of flooding, and you can see the area of aesthetic scenic beauty, which is the beach, basically, and we see the shoreland boundary in this dotted line. One thing we do not see over here in this area is areas of riparian vegetation. Now, if I drop down a little bit, you can see here, this area off the point here, this is got some vegetation on this that shows there, but we don't have any vegetation showing here in the Arch Cape area. So that's where this interpretation is coming from. So we don't actually have anything to use as vegetation for that non-vegetation barrier. So or line of non-aquatic vegetation. So I know that this came up. I was talking to Nadia Gardner earlier this week. This is the area of the Coleman property that she was expressing some concern about earlier. This is that area. We don't have the ability to apply that setback right there. So this is the part of the ordinance that we're using now. And so, Ian, how do I share this back to you?
I think if you click on the 3 dots on my screen, you can make me the presenter again.
The 3 dots on your screen.
Let me see if I can just take over.
Take over.
Okay, is everyone seeing my screen now?
Yes.
It should have a page of definitions up, and I've also included in the chat box a copy of this text here. So I believe, and Julia, could you correct me if I'm wrong, the memo from County Council was referring to this definition of aquatic areas.
I believe that's correct, Ian, but I don't have the memo in front of me right at the moment.
Okay. So the line of non-aquatic vegetation, from the way I understood it, was using the definition of aquatic areas, which, if you read it here, would just include tidal waters, subtidal areas, and estuarine wetlands, sloughs, streams, and wetlands within the shoreland area boundary. So that, if I remember correctly, was the rationale behind that interpretation from County Council.
I believe that's correct. I don't have the memo in front of me right at the moment, but I believe that's correct.
I'd be happy to send it around to folks.
That would be great. I'm kind of trying to get my mind around this. So basically what you're saying is that this effectively excludes your area because it's not an estuary.
I think
It would
that's what we're
exclude fresh
taking out.
Excludes
water
our,
wetlands.
I mean, the ordinance is what the ordinance is, and it sounds like the ordinance has been changed, is what I'm hearing.
No, it's just been ignored or overruled as unenforceable. I don't know.
To me, that's a change. I mean, it means the county isn't doing what the ordinance says
Right.
should be done. That's what it sounds like to me. Is that true, Ian? I mean, somebody from the county, I mean, the ordinance says what it says. Everybody can read what the ordinance says. If you're doing something different, I don't understand it.
So just to recap, the AC RCR zone includes a development standard that would require a 50-foot setback from the line of non-aquatic vegetation. And I don't know what the impetus for the county council memo was, but it was regarding development standards that include that language for a setback to the line of non-aquatic vegetation to interpret where that applied. And the interpretation of council of where that applied was based on this definition of aquatic areas to define where a line of non-aquatic vegetation would exist. And based on that definition, aquatic areas would only be coastal shorelands, not areas outside of the coastal shorelands area. So what we've been doing is, I guess, based on the interpretation of council.
Correct.
Well, I would be glad to provide a little background because this came up when I was a member of the Southwest Coastal Citizens Advisory Committee, which at that time was doing design review for everything, including type 1 permit applications for single family homes for this region. And we had two permit applications very close in time to each other, which wanted to build structures, new structures within the 50-foot wetland setback. And they were asking for variances to be allowed to build those structures. The first one, I think, was 20 or 25 feet variance. The second one wanted a 48-foot variance so that there'd be 2 feet of setback left. And the committee was against it, and we turned them down. And they appealed to the Board of Commissioners, and first to the Planning Commission, which actually agreed with us, and then to the Board of Commissioners. The first one, there started to be the board allowed the variance. The second one was set for a board vote, and this memo was written by county council to reinterpret the line of non-aquatic vegetation, which we had been using that definition for 40 years. And it was reinterpreted in order to get that appeal to the Board of Commissioners off the agenda. And it's attached to a staff memorandum on the second of the appeals, which was called Walsh. And I think it has changed all of the protections for all of the water elements we have in the county. And it's been almost 6 years now. And honestly, if this comprehensive plan isn't even going to be done for another 3 years, and we need to we need to get this back into the mainstream so that the county is doing what Goal 5 says it should be doing in terms of protecting water elements, and it's doing what the intent of the people who wrote the plan and wrote the ordinances wanted. And that memo should just be withdrawn, and we should go back to doing exactly what Charles says, which is, applying the rules as written and not for some exception that was made in order to get away, to avoid a vote is what it was. So that's not even me putting my spin on it. Those are just the facts.
Oh, and I'm going to support everything you said, Linda, because I also was involved in both the Walsh case and the Francis Capital case, both of whom involved variances to the 50-foot setback from wetlands. And, I gave testimony both at the Planning Commission and at the Board of Commissioners. So I agree with what you have said. And in my eyes, it is not in accordance with the statutes. And if that's what the county wanted to do, then the county should have changed the statute. And that they did not do that. Yeah. So I am about as adamant as I know how to get in my belief that this is something that needs to get addressed. Certainly, I intend to put my 2 cents worth in on the committee to make sure it gets addressed in the update. But as Linda points out, that's 2 or 3 years away. Meantime, we've got an awful lot of pristine, precious wetlands in both Arch Cape and Cove Beach that apparently are now free game for any developer that wants to come in and wipe them out. And that is not the intent of the people that drafted these goals.
So I would just point out one thing, Charles, that the development standard is for a setback to the wetland boundary, not to allow, so not requiring a 50-foot setback is different in my mind than allowing a developer to wipe out a wetland. There's still a process. There's still a process to review the potential wetland impacts that we go through with Department of State lands. And oftentimes we're requiring property owners to obtain a professional wetland delineation to determine the accurate boundary of the wetland. And then the second point is I see, and I hope you all received this from me this morning, Linda provided some comments on Goal 5, and I've highlighted here on the screen that she's identified this issue and also made a recommendation to mitigate that. So I just wanted to point that out to everyone just so we're all aware. But I also hear you that this update process will take a long time, and implementing those changes isn't going to happen overnight. So I hear you on that point as well.
Ian, I just sent you by email the staff report addendum that involves the Chris Crean interpretation so that you could share it with the rest of the committee. It's kind of long, but we've been talking about it, so everybody should have a copy.
Yeah, I agree. We definitely, all the committee members should have a copy of that.
Okay, I will send that via email to you.
Okay. So that's just, we should move on because we have a lot of other things to discuss with respect to wetlands and riparian areas. But, I think for the Southwest area, that is a huge, huge issue because we feel right now that those wetlands are very unprotected. And that is a very scary notion, I think, to a lot of us that live here. and that want and expect the state to protect those wetlands. So, I certainly would like to see it addressed. I certainly know that, we are going to monitor every building permit like hawks, and we are going to flood the Planning Commission as well as the Board of Commissioners with testimony if it looks like the rules are being violated, and that's not pleasant or productive for anyone. So it would really be nice if somehow the planning department could help us figure out a way to address this in the short term. So that said, both I and Linda submitted some written suggestions for the wetland and riparian area discussion, and we did break up Goal 5 into like 7 buckets, and we kind of agreed to go through these buckets as rapidly as we could, but some of them, just like wetlands, are pretty complex and controversial. So the first bucket was wetlands and riparian areas. So I'm not going to read the information I sent out because hopefully everybody on the committee's already had a chance to read it. Hopefully everybody's also read Linda's recommendations for Goal 5 wetland policies. So maybe the most productive thing to do would be to let the rest of the committee kind of comment on those suggestions.
I would just say that, Charles, I appreciated you laying things out the way you did in your comments. It was super helpful to me because I don't have a ton of available time for to review all this stuff, unfortunately. And I generally agree with what you said. I have not had a chance to review Linda's, though, due to the timing of them being sent.
I reviewed both, and but again, super helpful for me as well, because it again, some of this stuff is like drinking from the fire hose, but it is that was really helpful. Linda, I read yours this morning from beginning to end, and I kind of had them up on the screen here looking at them again. So I think they're right on and super helpful, unless somebody sees something that's glaring or that we've missed. But again, really excellent from both Linda and Charles. I appreciate that.
Linda, I want to
Did you have
thank you.
anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I did go through Linda's recommendations, and I want to thank her for being so thorough. Also, with regard to the Welch property, I was also involved in that, and Linda's recollection or research has been extraordinarily well done. And you too, Charles. It's good that both of you are still on top of this issue. But I think that with regard to Linda's things, we should go through them one at a time. Don't you think, Linda?
Either that or give people opportunity to read them and decide if there's, I would maybe make a motion to adopt or I don't know, adopting, we're just reaching consensus here, but, and I don't want to talk so much this time. My name is in the minutes too much.
Yeah, so personally, I would certainly be happy if the committee wanted to adopt the suggestions that were made by myself and by Linda, and and move on. But I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth.
Charles, the only questions I had about your suggestions had to do with the programs that the wetlands, the task force came up with. I don't know if I understand those well enough. The enhanced local wetland notification program and this transfer of development rights. Maybe someone could just summarize them generally so we get a sense of.
So somebody's got some background noise there. If you, whoever it is, if you could kindly mute, that would be helpful. So Linda, so I was not a member of the Wetlands Advisory Committee, but I did attend all of the meetings. I'm pretty sure Mike Manzulli was a member of the committee, if I remember correctly. And I thought that the attachment that Ian had for this discussion, the Goal 5 wetland discussion, that he sent out, I don't know, probably a month or 2 months ago, you know, kind of at the back of that 264-page missive, there were about 4 or 5 pages from the advisory committee that summarized their recommendations.
Right.
And the details of these recommendations are written there. I thought they were reasonably straightforward. So it does explain what the enhanced local wetland notification program is, and it also refers to the transfer of development rights program that was modeled on a program that does exist for Classic Plains. So my recommendation was that is something that we should propose that the county adopt. Now, obviously, you know, that just having our committee recommend that this is something that should be done for the comprehensive plan update does not mean it's going to get done. As we've already discussed, it's, you know, 2 or 3 years away, and it's going to go through all kinds of other committees and reviews. So I'm sure people will be fleshing out. I mean, if we recommend this and the county takes that recommendation to heart, then I'm sure there'll be lots more discussions about the specific details of what this enhanced local wetland notification program looks like, as well as a transfer of development rights program. So personally, I didn't want to get down in the weeds and try and engineer a solution right now. I just wanted to make the recommendation that these are things that the county should include in the in one form or another in the comprehensive plan update, and that the Wetlands Advisory Committee spent, you know, at least a year with some reasonably smart people coming up with good ways to protect the wetlands. And I'd hate to see that effort and that good work go to waste.
Well, you know, I went back even further and I found a 2013 newsletter. The county used to send out newsletters to neighbors to let them know about land use issues. And it was discussing the local wetlands inventory back then and the need to adopt it. And each thing that ended with staff saying they were going to be working on it, and then nothing happened. And the task force work session with the Board of Commissioners kind of ended the same way, with staff you'd get put him back on staff's desk to kind of take the next step. So I think maybe the way to go about this is to endorse the 4 recommendations or whatever the recommendations are. I think there were 4 from the local, the task force, and just ask staff to proceed as if that work session had just happened. And let's get to the next step and find out, like, okay, what are the county's recommendations based on the presentation of the task force? Let's try to move back 3 years and get and do what was supposed to be done then. And they can present them to us, you know, when they have had time to do it. But because I assume you're just going to start now.
You know, I certainly would support that recommendation.
We have 3 different things on the table that we're trying to support. One is Linda's list of recommendations that she sent out, I guess, earlier this week or last week. Yours, Charles, and then this one that Linda just explained. Do I understand that correctly?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to clarify it the way I understood it. So I think my motion or recommendation was to adopt the suggestions I made and the suggestions Linda made. So that the motion included both. And what I heard Linda say is she wants to take a shorter term action of getting the county to respond to moving the work done by the Wetlands Advisory Committee forward now, rather than wait until the end of the comprehensive plan update. So
okay, let's deal with those separately. I will second your motion, Charles, to adopt your recommendations and Linda's recommendations.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion from the other committee members? Hearing none, I'll vote aye.
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 It's unanimous, I think.
Well, I'm waiting for Chris.
Oh.
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, then it's unanimous. So I think that's great. I think we had a really good discussion about the wetlands, and I know the committee is certainly sensitive to the fact that we want to protect the wetlands as they exist today and as they sit on the ground, and that we're all really nervous about whether or not the county is actually going to do that. So we're all anxiously waiting for the county to hopefully allay our fears one way or another. But we didn't spend a lot of time talking about riparian areas. And maybe it's worth just a few minutes, even though we adopted the suggestion, maybe it's worth a few minutes talking about these riparian areas, because again, as an example, there's an issue here in Cove Beach where we have a stream, Cedar Creek, and a property owner has built a structure almost on top of the stream, within about 10 or 15 feet of the stream, and all up the embankment. And according to what I have been able to read in the ordinances, there should be a 50-foot setback from the line of non-aquatic vegetation to protect riparian corridors and areas. So we heard from the county on this issue of setback for wetland areas. So I'd really like to hear from the county on the issue of setback from riparian areas or corridors.
So can everyone see what I'm sharing on my screen now? It says S 4.500, protection of riparian vegetation there at the top.
Yes.
Could you zoom in a bit? Yeah, thank you.
All right, so this is what we use when looking at required riparian protection areas. So we've identified in the code here areas of riparian vegetation. The one applies to estuarine and coastal shoreland rivers and sloughs, and a 50-foot wide riparian area needs to be maintained, which generally means no ground disturbance or erection of structures or anything along those lines. And then the second area is lakes, rivers, lakes, reservoirs, and river segments outside of estuarine or coastal shoreline areas. And the same rule applies that a riparian vegetation zone 50 feet wide shall be maintained. So I think just anticipating the next question of, is a stream considered a river segment? Maybe Julia could chime in and talk about that and when S 4.500 applies and when it does not, as far as requiring that 50-foot wide riparian zone.
Sorry, I had a problem unmuting myself there for a moment. So the river segments, it's something we probably want to take a look at. May I ask though, is this one that's already in code compliance?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so that, in other words, it's already being handled. So apparently this particular segment is considered riparian. And so this one is already in code compliance. So that one will be handled through our code compliance specialists. If and I believe, if I know which one it is, I believe it's already got a violation letter on it and a few other things. So apparently, because I haven't worked with it, but apparently it's already been reviewed and determined that it is a violation.
Okay, well that's good, but my point, I was using it as an example. My real goal here is to get as much clarity around how these riparian corridors are defined and protected as we did for the wetlands. So at the moment, the way things stand, the level of protection for the wetlands certainly on the east side of 101 in Arch Cape is very much in question, I think, for all of us that live down here. And I want to understand better about these riparian corridors. So is it streams? Is it just lakes? How big is the lake? Is it Cove Beach Lake or is it Lake Superior?
Okay, so a riparian has to do with river, or anyway, we actually have a definition, and there it is.
Well, but Ian raised a good, what's a river segment? I mean, is a river segment a stream that feeds a river, or I don't know.
Well, plus here it says measurements are taken horizontally and perpendicular from the line of non-aquatic vegetation. So my question is, are you using County Council's interpretation of line of non-aquatic vegetation to restrict these protections to areas within the shoreland overlay area?
Well, as I'm sure you realize, staff is pretty much required to use County Council's interpretation. We don't have the ability to just choose when we'll use it or not. So basically, at this point, we're doing this on a kind of a case-by-case basis, and probably, I would guess that we would be looking at that one and saying from the top of the bank.
Okay, so I hear what you say, and I think I agree with what you've said. I just want to extend it a bit farther. And so, for instance, you know, Arch Cape Creek or Shark Creek, is there a riparian corridor along those water bodies?
Staff has been applying a 50-foot setback to the top of the bank of those creeks as long as I've worked here. You would have to get a variance in order to be closer to those.
Okay,
I don't
good.
actually know how you'd go about getting a variance to those unless you'd have to be able to show significant hardship and all that sort of thing. But we have been using a 50-foot buffer, and I see that Ian has just thrown the vegetation buffer. It says a 25-foot buffer of native non-invasive vegetation combined with proper removal of noxious weeds shall be maintained along the Arch Cape, Asbury, and Shark Creeks. But we've actually had a setback of 50 feet to those creeks in terms of construction. But yeah, that buffer is actually where you're supposed to maintain the vegetation in a native state. I don't know how many of you all are doing it, or well, I'm sure you all are doing it, but I don't know how many other people are down there doing it.
So the setbacks being applied to riparian corridors, but not to wetlands, even though the language line of non-aquarian vegetation is the same in the ordinances. Is that
Well,
right?
we're using a riparian setback rather because we don't regulate wetlands, but we do have the ability to use a riparian setback for a riverine setback. So we have been using the 50-foot setback for that. We just go with what this code says.
Okay, bear with me, Julia. You just said you don't regulate wetlands. I'm not understanding that.
The county does not regulate wetlands.
Because it has no local protection program, right?
The Department of State Lands regulates wetlands. The county at this time does not regulate wetlands.
But you do have setbacks that you're not applying.
To non-aquatic vegetation, but we don't have anything in our code that identifies a line of non-aquatic vegetation in a variety of places. And Arch Cape apparently is one of them. We have some aquatic vegetation identified or some flood area, and then we can use the shoreland overlay if we have those things. But if the shoreland overlay does not apply, then we don't have a way of using the 35 or the 50-foot setback or whichever one that we're talking about. But we have a riparian setback. So some things the county can regulate, some things we are not set up to regulate at this time. The Department of State Lands at this time regulates wetlands.
All right.
I see in our chat bubble, we had a comment that someone might have a question. Did someone have a question to ask the committee? If so, you could unmute yourself to ask the question.
Well, would we do that now or in public comment?
If you'd like to wait until public comment, Charles, we can do that.
Yeah, personally, I would like to do that.
Okay, we will hold comments until this discussion is done.
May I interject here? It seems we still have an item on the table, and that's Linda's suggestion that we expedite the review of wetlands. Linda, did you want to move ahead on that and have a motion, or shall we just let it slide?
Well, I think I was just, well, sure, a motion would be fine. I think what my motion was that the county move ahead with the next step after the work session in 2017 that occurred. It was put back on the county, I believe, to take the next step. And so I was just moving that the county do so.
I'll second that motion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll vote aye.
I vote aye.
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 Okay, I heard from everyone. That's unanimous. Okay, so we have almost a little bit less than an hour left. If nobody has a problem, I recommend we go to the second bucket of, or second topic here, which is watersheds and groundwater resources. In my eyes, they're very closely connected. They certainly involve preserving the natural environmental benefits of water and water-bearing resources. I have a particular interest in the watershed area, but also very cognizant of groundwater resources. So again, I've made a few suggestions in the material I sent out earlier regarding groundwater resources and watersheds. So I won't necessarily read through those. I'm assuming everybody already read them, so maybe I should give an opportunity for the other committee members to weigh in with their 2 cents worth on groundwater resources and watersheds.
Is it possible to move to adopt some of Charles's language?
Well, if you're asking me, we just did that for wetlands, so I'm certainly happy to have that outcome for groundwater resources and watersheds.
I also move we adopt Charles's recommendations for groundwater resources and watersheds.
I'll second.
So it's been moved and seconded to adopt the suggestions. Is any further comment or discussion about that?
Well, I just want to say I have kind of been focused on the wetlands this past month because there's been, like I say, so much stirring based on what we finally figured out was going on. And I'm not too prepared on these subjects because they're not ones that I have much knowledge about. So I read these all seem sensible, but there might be some additional ones that I would like to propose just kind of again, so that the county in their plan has committed to, I like these aspirational things where the county commits to protect the things that Goal 5 requires them to protect. And so I would like to say, this is fine with me, but I don't want it to be the end of the discussion.
Well, so Ian, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, I mean, we're working right now at the county level. As I recall from the original game plan, at a certain point in time, we are going to work on the precise Southwest coastal area comprehensive plan. So I think we are far from done with this topic, and we will get to revisit it, but maybe you could comment on that.
Charles, you are correct that we will be diving into the community plans at the end of our process. The intent was to look at each of the goals from more of a countywide perspective, although there's no reason you can't discuss local concerns as well, which your group has and is welcome to. But yes, we will be going back into the community plans toward the end of this process. And of note, just to add for this topic with groundwater resources and watersheds, a lot of this will also be addressed with Goal 6, which is air, water, and land quality. And that gets more into using those resources as drinking water supplies. So right after we're done with Goal 5, this topic will come back up.
Okay, thanks for that. So does that kind of address what your concern was, Linda?
Yeah.
All right. So one thing I would like to point out is that, again, since I also happen to wear a hat where I sit on the board for the Fountain Cove Beach Water District, and I'm very involved in all things that have to do with community water supplies. We do, as a district, have a watershed that's documented in our watershed protection plan, which has been approved by OHA. And I'd certainly like that watershed to somehow get documented on county maps, just as other watersheds are, so that when, you know, foresters, and a lot of our watershed, I mean, to a certain extent, one could say we're fortunate or unfortunate, but most of our watershed is in the hands of companies that raise trees and manage trees. And by and large, they do a pretty good job, I would say. But the issue has come up as these tracts change hands. So for a while it was Weyerhaeuser, then it was Stimson, now it's somebody else. There doesn't seem to be a good place for the landowner to go to understand where the watershed is. There's certainly no line painted on the ground, and I don't think in the Oregon Department of Forestry maps, I don't think they show watersheds, at least not ours. So on the list of resources that go along with these things in Goal 5, it would certainly be nice to have the Fountain Cove Beach Water District's watershed listed as something people should pay attention to. Any comments from the county as to?
Is the watershed for the creeks for Arch Cape listed? Because that would seem important too.
Yes, Arch Cape is listed under the Goal 5 list of resources in this category.
I've got a map up on the screen here of county watersheds. And I don't know if this is exactly what you're looking for, Charles, or if you wanted something more specific to the immediate vicinity of Falcon Cove Beach. But we do have.
Yes, I do want. So we're in the Ecola Creek watershed area, but in Goal 5, you know, Arch Cape, as an example, Arch Cape has a specific line listed on the resource table for watersheds, and since we are also a community water district, you know, I think we should also have our watershed listed.
Okay, understood. I will make a note of that.
Something I expect you to run, you know, after the meeting, go run and update anything. It's just, I wanted to be specific about that piece because you know, we've adopted the suggestions, and that was one of my suggestions, but I just wanted to drill into it a little bit more, because it is, I mean, goal 5 is where you find that list of important things. And goal 6, when we get to goal 6, we may talk about it again, but I don't know that, I suspect goal 6 is just going to refer back to the list of things in goal 5 when it's talking about what should be protected.
Well, and I would question, there are additional watersheds in our southwest coastal region for the Norriston Park area, and I think for Arcadia and picture windows. Shouldn't all the watersheds be in the inventory?
This is Julia, really fast, just asking a question. Are you looking for watersheds or are you looking for water districts? I think that the map that Ian is showing you is actually got watershed basins, which is a larger map. So it sounds like you maybe are looking for something that shows all of the individual water districts. Is that correct?
No, it's a bit different than what you said, but yes, so the basins are shown, but what is not shown is the actual watershed. So as an example, for us, we have a district, but the district doesn't include most of our watershed. Most of our watershed is actually out of our district. But for most community water supplies, each of the community water supply districts or organizations is required, as far as I know, by OHA to develop a watershed protection plan that identifies their actual watershed, and that is done in conjunction with OHA. So there is a topographical map that shows where our watershed is, and my specific request is let's get that topographical map included as under the Goal 5 list of resources, so that everybody knows that this is a watershed that a community depends on for its drinking water, and other organizations can identify, them if, for special treatment or protection or whatever. So as I said, as my example is, when Simpson or whoever, I can't remember, I think it was EcoTrust took over from Simpson a portion of forest land that was in our watershed, and they were going to go do some clear cutting and spraying, and we got wind of it through the NOAA notification system. So, we complained about it. They called up and said, "Oh, well, we had no idea there was a watershed there." So, and then we had a good conversation, and they agreed to take care as one would hope they would. It's just that, going forward, if we shouldn't let that be up to happenstance. I mean, the watershed should be clearly delineated so property owners know that there is a watershed there.
Before we close, I'd like to get another item on in front of us, if that's possible. Are we done with this one?
I think we are done with this one, and so your suggestion is.
Did we agree on this one, on the watersheds?
Yeah, well, I mean, we agreed to adopt the recommendations.
Yeah.
And everything I just talked about was in those recommendations.
Okay.
I just wanted to drill into it in a more wordy way, just so it was really clear and there wasn't any misinterpretation about exactly what we were asking for, or I was asking for, with respect to watershed.
Okay, but what about the other watersheds, the watersheds for the other communities in the district? I don't know too much about this subject, but there must be some.
Yes.
There's 2 or 3 other other communities in the Southwest Coastal region that have drinking water. Does anybody know about those?
I agree. There are and they're not districts. They are community water organizations, and whether or not they have a define their watershed or not, I don't know. But I think your point is well taken. That any community that derives its drinking water from a watershed should be afforded the same recognition as any other community.
Right.
I agree.
There may be, again, we are an official community water district, and there are state laws that do speak to how a community water district is treated and recognized and protected. I can't say anything about non-community water suppliers, although I know there are lots of them across the state. But I don't know whether they're required to have a watershed delineation like we are. But they should be protected. I agree with that.
So if I could just share a few resources with the group so that you're aware of what's currently out there. On the screen right now, I have some GIS information showing the boundaries of the watershed councils within Clatsop County. So the Southwest Coastal Planning Area is included in the Ecola Creek Watershed Council, and within the Southwest Coastal Planning Area, we have 2 water districts, as you know, Arch Cape and Falcon Cove Beach. So I just pulled up the Ecola Creek Watershed Council's webpage, and they have a watershed assessment for the Ecola Creek watershed, which delineates the sub-watersheds within the Ecola Creek watershed. So one thing that would be helpful to staff, if your group could clarify, is what information it is you're looking for and how you want it to be made available. My understanding is you're looking for more information like this that I have up on my screen, delineating these sub-watersheds and protecting them under Goal 5. Is that correct?
Yeah, so again, to try and be specific, Goal 5 under watersheds, in the list of resources, you have listed already Arch Cape. You do not have listed Falcon Cove Beach. I would like to see that list updated to include Falcon Cove Beach.
Okay.
But in addition, I would like to find out how the rest of the people, the rest of the properties in the Southwest Coastal region get their water, and whether there are additional watersheds, I guess, outside of the 2 districts that we should consider adding to the inventory for protection. And I don't know how to get that information, but I'd like to have it.
We may need to rely on outside experts. Maybe Julia could chime in on this, because I know there was some discussion in the past about having a presentation for the CACs or a workshop specific to watersheds. I'm not sure what the status is on that.
I'm not sure what the status is on that at this time either. Do the watersheds that you guys are referring to, do you have your own maps? Are those data that you can share with the county? I mean, we update web maps all the time with data layers. They are not necessarily our overlays, the county's overlays, but we add data layers all the time. If you have a map, you could share it.
So yeah, this is Charles. So the answer is yes, absolutely, we have a map, and yes, absolutely, I would love to see you do exactly what you just said.
Okay, well, that sounds easy.
I've spoken with a property owner north of Arch Cape, and they have, you probably have seen it as you drive up the highway, the white pipes that go up that creek just on the other side of the rocky outcropping there. They just have pipes that go into the creek. It's all individual, and I think there's another family that does the same thing. So it's not structured like it is for Arch Cape and Falcon Cove.
Does everybody have their own septic system then and their own wells?
Well, in this case, they're tapping a creek. They don't have a well.
Okay, they have septic, their own septic tanks?
Didn't inquire about that. I was just curious about,
Yeah.
And it's my understanding from days gone by that yes, but those communities have their own septic systems. They certainly don't have a community septic facility like Arch Cape, and they have their own private way of getting their water, which is either tapping a stream or tapping a spring. That's my understanding anyway.
Yeah, mine too.
So maybe we should move on to Todd's, since he's got something he wants to talk about.
Yeah, I do. This pertains to the identification of issues draft policies that Ian sent out. On that, I think it's the second page, there's one titled Wilderness Areas. And I know it's not in our planning district, but still, this is something jumped out to me. When you look at the map of parks and recreation areas in our county, they're along Highway 30 or along 101. I think there's only one or maybe two that are off those two roads, and one is off 202. There are none in the Coast Range, and I would like to see the county identify some sites in the Coast Range which would accommodate water and would accommodate camping, and to negotiate with the timber companies that own those sites to either purchase or have rights to use them as campgrounds. We don't give proper importance to recreation, I think, and with regard to our forest, and that's understandable because in the past the timber companies have pretty much written the documents that we're seeing. So I would like to see that turned around and give more credence to recreation in our forest areas.
Oh, Ian, is that a goal 5 thing?
It sounds like it would probably be more aligned with goal 8, which covers recreation.
Okay, I'll bring it up then.
All right, so I think we've done a good job here with wetlands and riparian corridors and groundwater resources and watersheds. So the next thing on the list is scenic and wild waterways. I guess I had mentally chalked off in that at the next meeting, but certainly if somebody wants to do that, if we've got some time left, I'm happy with that as well.
Let's let the public ask their questions first so that we be sure we don't run out of time. Would that be okay?
Yeah, good idea for me. So Ian, if you would moderate the comment section.
Sure, I see Carl Mattson with his hand raised, so I will try to unmute. I don't see an option to do that. Thank you, Carl, you've got it.
I had it pop up. I just wanted to emphasize Linda's comments about the not so organized water sources. I can think of two of them, and I think, Linda, you probably know them well. And you probably were referring to them. One certainly is the Picture Windows Lane area of the coast. And the other one is just the north part of Arch Cape, which has their own independent water source. Their wastewater is treated by the Arch Cape Sanitary District, but the water input comes from a spring-fed area. And I don't know how to approach it, but it seems to me like some work ought to be put into identifying those watersheds. I can think in my mind about some conversation in the last year or two concerning the area around Picture Windows Lane and some concern about the watershed and some pollution. So I think there's an opportunity to make the process more robust and identify the watersheds. So having said that, that's my comment. Thank you very much. I did. Yeah, I did.
Carl, when you say north part of Arch Cape, you referring to Carnahan or
Yes.
further Carnahan?
Thank you, Linda. My wife was in the background reminding me of that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, I see Nancy Chase has unmuted herself. Nancy, would you like to ask a question or make a comment?
Yes, I think Linda had recommendations, as did Charles, and I didn't want to leave my screen to go back to see if they had been handed out prior to the meeting or were in the other material you gave us. But I would like to read those.
So the recommendations that were provided by Charles, I was able to get into the agenda packet. So those are available within the agenda packet. The recommendations I received from Linda Eierman, I was not able to get into the agenda packet prior to sending that out. So I did actually send it directly to your email, Nancy, as well as Mr. Paparoni and Mr. Mattson. I sent that all to you, to you all. So you should have a copy of that in your email.
During the meeting or earlier? Or?
Yeah, I sent it during the meeting here this morning.
Okay, so we'll have an opportunity next meeting to comment if we need to.
Yes.
It's already been adopted, so it's, yeah.
For those to also be posted to our website. They'll be part of the meeting summary of today's meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Did any other participants have questions for the committee? I see we have Mr. Paparoni, and then it looks like we also have Patrick Boyle, who is not here at the beginning of the meeting.
I have no more comments, Mr. Ian. Thank you.
No comment.
I'm wondering if, since we're having comments, could I get a copy of the shoreland overlay paper map that you put up on the screen earlier? Or Julia put it up, I think.
I'll just email it to you right now.
Thank you.
And all of the committee members, please.
Actually, what I'll do is I'll send it to Ian and he can email it because he's got everybody on speed dial.
Perfect. But Carl's got his hand up. Ian?
Thank you. Just quickly, that water district on the north end of Arch Cape is called Cannon View Park. And they call them Cannon View Park. And I actually can send a link to anybody that's interested, but That's what they call themselves, and they actually identify themselves as a water district. So I think that'd be a pretty good one to put on your map. Thank you.
Yeah, they're
Thanks,
tanks.
Carl.
They got those two big tanks at the top of Hug Point Main Line, just off Hug Point Main Line Road up there. They're kind of hidden back there just past the gate, but they're up there.
All right, I mean, I have no heartburn about ending early. If nobody has other issues, and maybe, you know, for next time, I would propose anyway that we go after scenic and wild waterways, natural open space, wilderness areas, and recreation trails, and fish and wildlife habitat. I think we could do all three in 2 hours. Hopefully there's nothing in there quite as controversial or complex as the issues that we already covered today, since in many cases there's not a lot of involvement in, at least in our area, and perhaps, you know, in the rest of the county either. I don't know. But that would be my suggestion. I'd like to hear what other people thought about it.
Let's go for it. Put it on the agenda so we can get that up before us. In fact, Charles, if you could email that list to us so we can be studying it in the interim, that'd be good.
Okay, yeah, I think Ian sent it out to everybody a while back, but either Ian or I can certainly send it out again. No problem.
So I'll be sure
Um,
to include that in the agenda. It looks like if you look at the minutes of the July 8th meeting, Todd, which I'm sharing here on my screen, we've got the 7 sort of buckets that we've divided Goal 5 into. So it sounds like the next meeting will cover items number 3, 4, and 5 on that list.
Yeah, I have that list, so you don't need to send it as far as I'm concerned. I can see them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ian, do you anticipate sending additional materials on these subjects, or should we already have what we need?
I don't believe we have any additional materials to provide on these ones. Just what's in Goal 5 currently, in the county Goal 5, as well as what's in the statewide Goal 5.
Okay.
So, I mean, Margaret's comment triggered a thought in my head. I think the Mechanicsum River Wilderness section is a pretty recent addition. Was that included in the materials you sent out?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, Charles.
Okay.
What do you mean under the watersheds topic here?
No, this was under the scenic and wild waterways for next time.
Oh, okay. No, sorry, I've caught up to you now. So that stretch of the Nehalem River that is now a state scenic waterway was just added within the past year. So it is not currently adopted under Goal 5 in the county's comprehensive plan.
Well, I guess what my question was is in that case, is there something extra that you could or should send out about that Nehalem River section?
Sure, I can find some information about that and send it to you.
Perfect. Well, unless anybody has any other business, I think we've done everything we needed to do in this meeting. So I certainly entertain a recommendation or a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn. That was Todd.
Second.
Second.
So Todd moved, Margaret seconded, all in favor. Charles is aye.
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 Thank you to the staff for, we're not blaming the staff for doing what you're told. It's not, you're just happen to be in the wind here and the conduit to hopefully get some things fixed. Okay. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
And thank you, everyone. The next meeting will be, let's see, we're on the second Wednesday of the month. So that would make your next meeting the week of Labor Day, which will be Wednesday, September 9th at 10 a.m.
Okay,
Thanks,
Sounds
everyone.
good to me.
See you then.
that's good.
Okay.
All right. Stay well.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.